Back in 1986, a small Navy station on a North Atlantic rock got hit by something none of us saw coming. Not an enemy. Something real, alive, and big enough to shake a whole damn outpost apart. One flare, one stupid joke, and the sea answered in a way that nearly killed us. This isn't some camp rumor. This happened. And if you think the ocean's quiet at night, you've never heard it breathe. So before we begin, make sure to like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments, what would you have done if that thing surfaced under your feet? Alright, let's get into it. Early autumn, 1986. Pre-dawn. The kind of cold that cuts through wool and finds the bones. Our little North Atlantic rock sat out there like something the world forgot about. A listening post stuck on cliffs and wet stone, with deep water dropping off just a few steps past the shoreline. The surf never stopped. It slammed the rocks day and night, steady as breathing. I was Sergeant Mark Doyle back then. Sonar and radar. Mostly sonar, since the radar never showed much worth waking anyone over. I'd been on that island too long. Months felt like years. The metal corridors sweated. The bunks smelled of damp uniforms and half-dry socks. Coffee tasted burnt even when it was fresh. The radios hissed with nothing. It all wore you down. I'd tell myself I was getting used to it, but really I was going numb. We had a crew of about a dozen on rotation, but only a handful I dealt with every day. Private Ian Calder was the new kid. Barely 2 weeks in when all this happened. Young, nervous, always trying to read the room before he opened his mouth. He kept asking questions about the water around the island, wanted to know what whales looked like up close, or how deep the drop-off was. I could tell he'd spooked himself reading old stories or hearing the usual barracks crap. He tried to act hungry for action, but he watched the sea like it was staring back. Corporal Lena Varga ran the shore patrol. Cold eyes, straight posture, everything by the book. Never mean without reason, but she didn't have much patience for games. She walked those rock shelves every morning and evening, checking the path, the towers, the storage cage. Never slipped, never lost focus. If someone from her team screwed something up, she fixed it first and chewed them out later. Then there was Warrant Officer Haynes, old salt with hands that looked carved out of rope. Maintenance, engines, and every other part of the station that kept humming despite the rust. He knew what broke, when it broke, and who broke it without needing a report. You didn't argue with him unless you enjoyed losing. Most mornings started the same. Wake up to the buzz of the overhead lights. Drink cold coffee because someone forgot the pot again. Pull on a damp uniform. Check the gear. Listen to the sea pounding beneath the cliff edge. You'd hear it through the floor sometimes, deep thuds rolling up through the rock. A reminder that the island wasn't solid so much as stubborn. The watch rotation never changed. Radio. Shoreline checks. Equipment logs. Every hour or so I'd scan the sonar boards for anything interesting. Cargo ships passing far out. Submarines too deep to hear clearly. Sometimes a whale if the season was right, though most kept clear of our shallows. The water dropped off fast, but the surf made it rough near the rocks. Not a good place for anything big. Calder hung around me more than I wanted. He asked what each line on the screen meant. He hovered over the console like he thought he'd discover something we all missed. Eager, desperate to prove he was worth bringing out here. I wasn't much older than him, but I felt like I'd already lived 2 lifetimes on that island. One morning, this morning in the story, I caught him staring at the main display like it might talk back. I nudged him with an elbow. "What you looking for?" I asked. He jumped. "Just checking. You know, in case something happens." "Nothing ever happens," I said. "That's the whole point of this place." He gave a weak laugh. I could hear the unease in it. Later, while he was out doing a shoreline pass with Varga's team, I sat staring at the empty screens, listening to the radio's hiss. Boredom wasn't just a feeling out there. It ate at you. Dug in. You wanted something, anything, to break the routine, even something dumb. That's where the idea came from. A prank, small, stupid, cruel maybe, but harmless on paper. Calder was wound tight as a drum, and part of me wanted to see how he'd jump. Part of me wanted to break the monotony. Part of me just wanted to feel something. I knew the sonar system inside and out. I knew how to fake a contact if I wanted, not by hacking anything, not that fancy, just playing an old training loop on one of the secondary channels, so it looked like something big drifting slow underwater. Nothing dramatic, just enough to raise a few brows and get Calder's heart thumping, but that didn't feel like enough. I wanted something he could see from the rocks too, something to make him believe it for a minute or two. We had distress flares stored in a metal locker near the west walkway. A few were rigged for timed tests, setups for checking firing angles without anyone standing beside them. If you switched the order on the timers, you could send one out a bit past the rocks. Looked like it came from the water if you didn't know better. I remember standing in that gray corridor with the metal floor cold under my boots, thinking about it. I could hear Haynes somewhere below me shouting at a pipe that hissed back like a pissed-off cat. The whole station buzzed and hummed in that familiar way. And I thought, this will be funny. Just a quick scare. Break the kid in. Nothing bad will come of it. I told myself it was bonding. That's what I said out loud when I mentioned it to one of the other guys. But really, I was chasing a hit of excitement. Boredom had become hunger, so I rigged the flare. Set it to launch offshore in the pre-dawn dark. Synced it to the moment I'd run the fake sonar contact. Nothing huge, just a weird shape on the screen. Enough to make Calder think something was wrong out in the water. Enough to let me laugh later and tell him how he fell for it. I kept my plan quiet. No reason to get Varga's wrath on me. She didn't like surprises. She sure didn't like games. The air outside smelled like salt and metal that night. Wind cut across the cliffs. You could taste the cold. Deep water churned against the rock shelves, black and heavy. The kind of dark that didn't reflect anything back. The station felt normal, safe enough. The kind of safety that comes from routine, not from being out of danger. We all trusted the place because we lived in it, not because it deserved trust. Like a locked door that never been tested. The sea was close. Always close. You could lean out from the walkway railing and feel the spray hit your face. You could hear the depth calling through the surf. It wasn't mystical. It was just there. Big. Uncaring. Vast enough that anything could swim past without us knowing. And Calder feared it, even if he didn't say so straight. That night, he came back from patrol with his cheeks red from wind and eyes bright, like he was trying to prove he belonged. He stood next to me at the console. "Quiet tonight," he said. "Too quiet," I muttered, playing into it. He swallowed. "You ever hear stories about this place? From guys before us?" "Every station has stories," I said. "Most of them are crap." He nodded, but he didn't look convinced. He kept glancing at the window, listening to the waves. I remember watching him and thinking, he's going to jump sky high when the flare goes off. And for a moment, I felt almost giddy, like something in me woke up after months of monotony. I didn't know that the sea was already shifting in ways we didn't understand, that something deep was moving long before my stunt went off, that we'd all mistake my prank for the start of everything, when the truth had started without us. But back then, the station was quiet. The rocks were wet, the waves rolled steady. The sky was clear enough that the stars looked like cold pinholes overhead, just another pre-dawn on a forgotten island. And I was about to make it the last normal one we ever had. The weird part started before the prank even fired, hours before dawn, when the air was still and the sea sounded steady. I'd been sitting at the console, the room dim, radios hissing low, Calder half dozing in a chair beside me. Varga's patrol was gearing up for another shoreline sweep. Routine. Nothing odd. Then the sonar screen twitched. Not the usual blur or glitch you get from cold salt water messing with the signal. This was slow, heavy. Something big passing across one of the lower channels. Too smooth for a ship. Too wide for anything normal. I frowned and leaned closer. Calder sat up fast. "What was that?" "Probably nothing," I said. But I didn't believe that. Not the way the line moved. It wasn't sharp like metal. It wasn't scattered like a rockfall under the cliff. It was, wait, not fast, just moving with purpose. The reading drifted off the edge of the display. Gone. No echo. No return. Calder stared at me. "That wasn't a glitch." "Could have been," I said, rubbing my jaw. "This gear's older than both of us." He didn't look away from the screen. Truth was, I'd never seen that exact signature, not once. And it stayed in my head like a pressure pushing from behind my eyes. The station felt different after that, harder to ignore the little sounds, the hum in the pipes, the wind tapping somewhere in the metal. Even the radio seemed sharper, like the static had teeth. Before Varga left with her patrol, she stopped by the control room. She looked tired, but she always looked tired. "You two good?" she asked. "Quiet night," I said. Calder nodded too fast. She narrowed her eyes at him. "Don't let your imagination get ahead of you." He swallowed. "Yes, ma'am." She didn't smile. She never did before a patrol. "Stay sharp. The rocks are slick." When they headed out, I kept staring at the sonar display. I told myself the weird signal was a ghost line. Old equipment throwing a fit. But the way it had crawled across the screen, yeah, it was hard to shake. 10 minutes later, another odd thing hit. Small, but enough to make me tense up. The weather panel on the wall, just a simple box of lights and gauges, showed a pressure drop. Fast. Then it jumped back up. Then another dip. The sky outside was calm. Stars still out. Wind gentle. But the panel flickered like a heartbeat skipping. Calder rubbed his ear. "You feel that?" "Feel what?" My ears popped. I blinked. Mine had too, but I hadn't noticed until he said it. I stepped outside the control room for a second and stood in the corridor. The air felt thick, not cold, not cold. Like the whole island breathed once, slow, then settled again. Haynes came stomping up from the lower level right then, tool pouch rattling on his belt. "Why's everyone looking spooked?" he barked. "Someone die?" "Weather panel's acting up," I said. "Panel's older than I am," he grunted. "Pressure jumps because the wiring's trash. Ignore it." He walked past like the world offended him. Calder watched him leave. "You buying that?" "No," I said. "But it's either bad wiring or something in the water messing with pressure, and I don't like either." I could feel Calder's stare on the side of my face. "You think it's something big?" he asked quietly. I shrugged. "Could be a whale. Could be a current shift. Could be nothing." He swallowed again. "What if it's—" "Don't start," I snapped. "You'll drag yourself nuts." He shut up, but his foot tapped nonstop. Truth was, a part of me already regretted setting up the prank flare. The night didn't feel right. The island felt off. Not loud or dramatic, just wrong in a way you sense before you see anything. But I'd already set the timer, already told myself it would be harmless. And pulling the plug meant admitting I was chickening out over nothing, so I pushed it aside. Told myself the weird signal was just stray noise. Told myself the pressure swings were the panel losing its mind. Told myself everything was fine. But Varga wasn't fooled. When she radioed in from the shoreline, her voice was tighter than usual. "Waves are quieter than they should be," she said. "Feels like the water's holding its breath." "Probably just the tide," I answered. "Not like any tide I've seen." Behind her voice, I could hear her team shifting around on the rocks. Boots crunching. Wind blowing across the cliff face. Calder leaned too close to the radio. "Everything all right out there? Focus on your post," she said. No softness, no room for questions. She cut the line. Calder sank back into his chair. He looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Me? I felt that old itch, the one that made you poke at the unknown instead of backing away. The prank was going to hit soon. Maybe it'd break the tension. Maybe it'd make everyone laugh later. Or maybe the timing was piss poor and I should have scrapped it when I had the chance. I sat back at the console. The room felt smaller. The hum of the station louder. The sea outside started sounding deeper, like something moved far under the surface. Calder whispered, "You hear that?" "What now?" That low sound, like the water's pressing in. I listened. He wasn't wrong. Something in the pitch of the waves had changed. But I told myself it was nerves. His, not mine. "Stop staring at shadows," I said. "You'll see things that aren't there." But in my gut, I felt it. Unease. A dry, slow curl of dread. The kind that doesn't shout. The kind that taps your shoulder once and waits. The flare timer ticked down in my pocket watch case. I felt the metal against my thigh like a pulse. Too late to stop it now. Too late to do anything but wait. The flare went off right on time. Too perfect. Too clean. A sharp hiss somewhere past the cliffs, then a red streak cutting upward over the black water. It arced high, hanging in the air like a spark torn loose from the dark. Calder jumped to his feet. "What the hell?" "Signal flare," I said, pretending to be surprised. "Must have misfired." His eyes were huge. "From the water?" Probably drifted. Could have rolled off one of the storage crates near the rocks. Even while I said it, the lie tasted bad. The flare floated down slow, casting red light across the waves. The sea should have looked normal under a dark surface, steady swell. But instead, something changed fast and wrong. Below the cliffs, the water pulled back. Not a gentle tide pull, not a slow retreat. It yanked away in one long breath, like the sea sucked itself outward. In seconds, the rocks and kelp below were exposed, wet and glistening in the flare's glow. I'd never seen the shoreline empty out like that. Not that fast. Not ever. Calder's face went white. "Sarge, that's not right." "No," I said, "it's not." Varga's patrol was on the rocks when it happened. I heard her voice crackle through the radio, tight and sharp. "All units, move back." Now. Water shifting. Behind her words, I caught the scramble of boots on slick stone. Shouts. Someone slipping. Calder rushed toward the window. "It looks like the sea's breathing." He was right. That's exactly how it looked. One long inhale. Then the exhale hit. A burst of water exploded upward beneath the falling flare. Not foam from a wave. Not spray from a crash. A column, tall and violent, like something huge, shoved up from underneath. The flare spun in the air, bounced off the spray, then sputtered out as it smacked into a rock shelf not far from Varga's team. "What was that?" Calder gasped. I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. And because the sick truth washed over me. My prank had blown open at the worst time. Varga radioed again, breathless. "We're repositioning." Waves coming back hard. "Move, move." I could hear one of her guys yelling something in the background, his voice high and panicked. Another one cursing as they scrambled for a foothold. Calder turned to me. Should I call distress? Should we get command on the line? "Hold," I said, forcing my voice steady. "We need to know what we're looking at." He stared at me like I'd lost it. Maybe I had. But admitting right then that I'd triggered the flare, that I'd drawn the patrol to that exact place, at that exact time, that would have frozen everyone, or sparked chaos. And we needed everyone clear-headed. The shoreline swallowed itself again. The water came rushing back, slamming into the rocks with a sound that vibrated through the walls. I grabbed the console to keep steady. "Varga," I called into the radio. "Status." Her reply came between breaths. "We're okay." Shaken up. One of the kids slipped, but we pulled him back. "What the hell is happening, Doyle?" "I'm checking sonar. Stand by." I pulled up the display. My gut clenched tight. Nothing on the screen. No contact. No echo. Like the sea had just emptied. Calder hovered near me, breathing fast. I swear something hit that flare from underneath. Something came up. I saw a shape in the spray. "You saw water," I said. "Not like that." He wasn't wrong. The burst had looked like a strike from below, and it happened right under my damn flare. If I hadn't said it, if I hadn't triggered that whole chain, I swallowed hard. My hands felt stiff. Varga radioed again. "We're heading to higher ground." That push nearly trapped us. "Copy," I said. Calder paced behind me, rubbing his arms like the cold was biting deeper. What if that wasn't the flare's fault? What if whatever made that ghost signal earlier is still out there? I didn't answer. Because now I wasn't sure where the line between prank and reality was. The timing lined up too tight. And yet the sea didn't move like that because of a flare. Something else was in the water. Something big enough to shove half the shoreline around with one motion. I checked the display again. Still nothing. Then Calder said something that twisted my stomach. "Sarge, what if the flare woke something up?" I snapped. "It didn't wake anything. It's just a flare." But my voice wasn't confident. Not even close. Varga's squad reached the upper walkway. I heard the distant clatter of boots through the open door. They were soaked to the knees and breathing hard. One kid had a bleeding scrape across his forearm. Varga looked furious, not scared, just angry at the situation. She stepped into the control room, dripping seawater. "What did you see on your end?" she asked. "Flare misfire," I said. Her eyes locked on mine. Hard. Searching. "That was no flare misfire," she said. The room felt small again. Too small. Calder pointed out the window. "Something hit it, I swear." Varga ignored him. She stepped closer to me. "Mark, tell me true. Anything on sonar before that mess?" I hesitated. "Too long." She saw it. Doyle, she said, voice low. If something's out there, we need to know. I told her about the ghost signal. Not the prank, not the flare. Just the strange, heavy line creeping across the screen earlier. Her jaw clenched. Great, so something big enough to move the tide just wandered past us. It didn't look like tide, Calder whispered. No one corrected him. We listened to the sea thundering below, heavier now. Like something deeper churned underneath the surface. The flare had been mine. The chaos afterward, that belonged to the water. And I didn't like where that line blurred. The sea didn't settle after the flare. It got worse, louder, heavier. Like whatever was moving out there had decided to stay close. The air in the control room felt tight. Everyone crowded around the windows or the radio desk, trying to pretend we weren't doing exactly that. I stayed at the console staring at the sonar display, hoping for anything that made sense. Instead, a sound came through the speakers. Deep, low, drawn out. Not noise, not static. A living call. So heavy it made the metal in the room hum. You didn't hear it with your ears so much as your chest. Calder backed away fast. That's a whale, he said, voice shaking. Yeah, I said. That's a whale. The whales didn't wander this close to our cliffs, and that call felt wrong, slow, drawn out like something straining. The patrol team was peeling off wet gear, spreading out in the small space. Varga stood near the entrance, arms crossed, jaw set like stone. She listened, but didn't talk. Haynes stomped in a second later, annoyed as always. What's all this, he asked, glaring at the speakers. Someone messing with the audio feed? Calder pointed. There's something out there, Haynes snorted. There's always something out there. That's why we're here. Before anyone could push back, Varga's radio crackled. One of her patrol members, Jameson, sounded breathless. Corporal, there's movement offshore. Big shadow. Real close. Varga tightened her grip on the handset. Describe. Dark shape, can't tell depth. Just saw it pass under a wave. Big. Bigger than anything I've seen out here. I glanced at Calder. His face had gone pale again. We all rushed outside toward the west walkway. The wind cut across us like broken glass. Dawn was creeping in, gray and slow, just enough light to make out movement on the water. The surface rose in a slow, rolling hump, not a wave. A back, long, sleek, dark gray, almost black in the half-light. It slid up, broke the surface, then rolled under again. Holy hell, one of the patrol whispered. That's huge. It was. Twice the length of the patrol boats, maybe more. And seeing it that close to the rocks made the hairs crawl on my neck. Another call came through the air, vibrating the walkway under our boots. Varga narrowed her eyes. It's injured, I frowned. How can you tell? She pointed. Far out, trailing behind the shape, something stretched across the water-thin line, dark against the swell. Net, she said. Or rope, hard to see. The whale surfaced again, and now the shape trailing behind it caught more light. Looked like heavy line or old fishing gear tangled around its back end, dragging through the surf. It thrashed once, rolling with a desperate kind of force. The wave it pushed hit the rocks like a sledge, splashing over the walkway railing. Calder gasped. It's trapped. Yeah, it was. And not thinking clear. Panic in something that big meant danger to everything nearby. Another call rumbled through the speakers behind us. A shudder rolled through the metal under our feet. That's not good, Haynes muttered. That's stressing our underwater cable. What cable? Calder asked. Haynes looked at him like he'd asked how to breathe. The main line that runs under the rock. Carries half our signal feed. If that whale's dragging something tied to it. The walkway shivered. Everyone turned toward the station. Inside, alarms started beeping. Warning lights blinking. I bolted back to the control room. The sonar display showed strain spikes, pressure on the line we weren't built to handle. Haynes barged in behind me. Damn thing's hooked on us. I stared at him. Hooked? Either the net wrapped our cable or the cable caught on the trailing mess. Doesn't matter which. If that whale pulls hard enough, it'll rip out half our lower systems. Power? I asked. Gone, he said flat. Dead. Or worse, blown. The weight of that settled in the room like dropped stone. Calder hovered near the window. Can't we cut the line from here? Haynes barked a bitter laugh. You want to go diving at dawn in freezing surf next to a panicked whale? Be my guest. No one moved. Then Varga's voice cut through. "We have to get it off us." She wasn't panicked. She wasn't calm either. She was in that narrow space between. "What if it calms down?" another patrol member asked. "What if it swims off on its own?" As if answering, the whale surfaced again, closer. Too close. I felt the spray on my face through the open doorway. It groaned, exhaling through the blowhole with a sound that shook my ribs. The rope or net dug into its flesh, leaving raw marks. It twisted, tried to dive, but the line yanked against its movement. A faint metallic groan ran through the station. I checked the monitors. Strains increasing. Calder swallowed hard. "So the flare?" I didn't answer. Not yet. The truth pressed on me like a clamp. If I confessed right there, Varga would lose her mind. Command would start barking. Everyone would be fixed on blame instead of dealing with the problem tearing at our cable. So I said nothing. Not yet. Varga stood beside me. "Options?" Haynes scratched his beard. "Best case? It frees itself. Worst case? It rips our cable apart and takes the lower generator feeds with it." "And the station?" she asked. "Parts of it go dark. Maybe collapse if pressure shifts wrong." The room tightened. Calder spoke soft. "Is it hurting itself? The whale?" "Yeah," Varga said, voice low. "It is." Her eyes followed the huge shadow outside, rolling under the waves, dragging agony behind it. No one spoke for a moment. The sea groaned against the rocks. The station lights flickered once. Twice. Haynes muttered to himself. "If it snaps the cable too fast, the tension will jerk the anchor bolts. That'll rip through the lower hull." I looked at Calder. He looked at me. He didn't know. Didn't suspect me. Not yet. But I knew. That flare had thrown everyone off balance. Put Varda's team on the rocks at the exact wrong moment. Drew attention where it shouldn't have been. The prank wasn't funny anymore. It wasn't even a prank now. It was a mistake that had grown teeth. The whale called again. Low, long, pained. Calder covered his ears. "Why is it so close? Why is it coming in so shallow?" "Because it's trapped," Varga said, and scared. She stared into the water like she was staring at a wounded animal in the road. Not a monster, not a threat. Just something big and desperate, thrashing without meaning to destroy anything. But every time it moved, the station shuddered. Every breath felt like a countdown, and I felt the weight of what I hadn't said building in my chest. My silence was turning into a failure that was going to hurt more than a few feelings, but I still didn't confess. Not yet, because we had bigger problems rising in the water. The whale came in closer, too close. Close enough that when it surfaced, I felt the spray hit my face like cold breath. The dawn light showed the size of it, massive, dark, rolling under the water like a living hill. Bigger than any fin whale I'd ever seen. Bigger than anything that belonged in water that shallow. It gasped through its blowhole, raw and loud, like it was trying to pull air through pain. The rope or net trailing behind it sliced a long, ugly line across its back. Each time it moved, the line bit in deeper. "This thing's hurt bad," Varga said, stepping to the railing. "It shouldn't even be this close to shore." "No whale comes into surf like that unless it has no choice," Haynes added. "It's panicking." Panic from something that size was like a storm with muscle. You couldn't predict it. You couldn't reason with it. You just hoped you weren't in the wrong place when it thrashed. One of Varda's patrol guys leaned over the rail, staring wide. "It's dragging the cable. I can see it dip when it moves." And he was right. The underwater cable stretched under the surf like a taut line. When the whale rolled, it yanked the cable toward deeper water. With every pull, the station groaned. I checked the console, inside lights flickered, readings spiked and dropped. "We're taking stress on every lower anchor," I said. "If it dives again, we might lose more than just sensors." The whale tried to dive right then. The water churned white, the rope trailing behind it stretched tight. The cable jerked with it. The whole station shivered. A metal plate somewhere below rattled hard enough to echo through the floor. Calder staggered back, hand on the wall. "It's trying to get free. It's going to rip the place apart." "Easy," Varga said, grabbing his shoulder before he backed into the open rail. "You stay steady. Eyes up." The water smashed against the rocks again, hard. A wave slammed into the walkway, knocking one of the younger guys to a knee. Varga hauled him up fast. "Stay clear of the edge. No one goes down to the lower shelf." He nodded, breathing sharp. The whale surfaced again, closer than before. Its head came up for a moment, dark, slick, huge. Its eye flashed in the gray dawn light. Not human, not knowing. Just a giant creature choking on fear and rope. Nobody spoke. Then Haynes broke the silence with something blunt and ugly. "We need to cut the damn cable." Calder snapped his head toward him. "We can't leave the whale like that. That whale is going to take this station with it," Haynes barked. "We lose the lower systems, we lose power. Heat, radios, everything." Varga stepped between them. "Cut the cable and the whale might drown." "It's not our job to save wildlife," Haynes said. "It's our job to keep this place running." Calder shook his head fast. "What about using flares? Drive it off? Scare it? Something?" "Flares won't do a damn thing," Haynes said. "It's trapped. It's not listening to anything." Varga's jaw tightened. "We don't leave something to die if we can help it. Not dying's not an option if we lose power," Haynes growled back. "Cold will kill us faster than guilt." I stood there listening, knowing something they didn't, knowing the flare that started all this wasn't an accident, knowing I'd put the patrol on the rocks at the exact worst moment. But admitting it now would just spark more anger, more confusion, right when we needed to be thinking about survival. My silence pressed on my chest like a weight. I hated the feel of it. Then the whale dove again, hard. The cable jerked so violently the railing vibrated under my hands. The metal deep in the station groaned like something snapping under pressure. Lights flickered inside. The hallway lamp stuttered twice, then steadied weakly. "What was that?" Calder gasped. "The cable," Haynes said. "It's going to rip something loose." The alarms inside let out a brief chirp before cutting to static. I felt sweat freeze on my back. The whale surfaced again, mouth partly open, gasping. The net or rope wrapped across its back ground in deeper. Blood mixed into the water, not much, just enough to tint the surf for a second at the surface. It wasn't trying to destroy anything. It was fighting for its life, and we were in the way. Varga crossed her arms, staring into the water. "We need options." Haynes pointed a thick finger at the walkway. "Option 1, cut the cable from inside and hope the station holds. Option 2, let it break the line and crash the systems." "And option 3, Varga asked. "Doesn't exist," Haynes said. "It did, though. We just didn't want to say it yet." Then the walkway jolted again as the whale rolled. A wave slammed the rock shelf below, sending spray up to our boots. The pressure in the air shifted. My ears popped like someone pushed a thumb into my skull. "We're running out of time," I said quietly. Calder paced, eyes darting. "If we don't help it, it dies. It's not trying to hurt us, it's just stuck. The rope's cutting into it. It's suffering." "Everything suffers out here," Haynes muttered. "Not like that," Calder shot back. The kid was shaking, not just from cold. Then I felt it, the truth rising inside me like a slow bruise. I'd drawn them out with that flare. If the patrol hadn't been on the rocks, they might have avoided the worst of the early push. If I hadn't played games with the sonar, Calder wouldn't be on edge. The timing wasn't just bad, it was mine. I clenched the railing so hard the metal bit my palm. Varga watched the water again. Her voice dropped low. "This creature isn't the enemy. It's caught on us. We do nothing. This keeps escalating. We're not fighting a war against the whale," I said, "but we're not letting the station die either." Calder looked up suddenly. "If the flare hadn't gone off, I cut him off fast. Doesn't matter now." But my voice was too flat, too sharp. He stared at me like he heard something underneath. The whale let out another long, low call, a sound that rolled up the cliff face and shook in our chests. It wasn't angry. It wasn't hunting. It was crying out, and the strain on the cable was getting worse by the second. Varga gripped the railing. "Whatever we decide, we have to decide fast." The whale thrashed again, harder than before. A huge wave slammed the lower walkway. One of the patrol members slipped, yelling. Varga grabbed him by the collar and yanked him back, her boots skidding dangerously close to the edge. She saved him, but she nearly went over with him. Haynes swore under his breath. "That's it, we don't have time. We either cut that cable or it rips this place apart." Calder's breath hitched. "We have to help the whale. We can't let it drown because of us." The wind picked up. The sea roared. The metal below creaked under the strain, and I knew the moment was coming when everything I'd done, Everything I'd set in motion was going to crash down on all of us. But right then, all we could do was brace ourselves, because the whale wasn't done fighting, and neither was the sea. The weather turned fast. Too fast. One moment the air was still and sharp. The next, the wind ripped across the cliffs like it wanted to peel the station off the rock. Rain came in sideways, needles lashing our faces. Waves rose higher than the lower walkway, smashing against the cliffs hard enough to throw spray up to the rail at our feet. The sea wasn't just rough. It was angry. The kind of shift that could break a man's footing in one wrong heartbeat. The whale kept thrashing in the surf, panicked, desperate, dragging the tangled net or rope and our underwater cable deeper into the chaos. Every time it rolled, the metal anchors below us groaned. The station trembled like something was punching it from beneath. Haynes shouted over the wind, "Boats are useless now. Don't even think about launching them." I didn't need to look to know he was right. One glance toward the cove made my stomach drop. Our small boats were tossed around by the swell. Two were already smashed against the rocks, hulls cracked open. The third slammed against the landing like a toy, then vanished under a wave. We had no way off the island, no way down to the lower shelf, no way to reach the cable from the water. The storm had sealed every escape route. Inside, the station wasn't faring much better. When the whale dove again, dragging the line with it, a deep metallic pop echoed beneath us, the kind of sound you feel in your teeth. I ran inside with Haynes, boots pounding on wet metal. The corridor lights flickered, then dimmed as the generator coughed. A cold draft hit us wrong, too cold, like the sea had found a crack. Haynes stormed toward the lower stairwell. If that's a leak, we're screwed. We hit the lower level hard. The air smelled of rust and wet metal. A thin line of seawater trickled from a seam along the wall, slow but growing. Every few seconds, the station shuddered again, water vibrating in the crack. Pressure shifting, Haynes muttered. "That damn cable's pulling everything out of alignment." His voice wasn't angry now. It was scared. That scared me more than anything. Back upstairs, the others were huddled near the window, staring at the massive shadow rolling under the swell. The storm made everything stutter in flashes. Rain, metal, the whale slicked back, cutting through the surf. Then it surfaced again, close enough to hear the rough, ragged gulp of air. The rope trailing behind it cut deeper into its skin. It was suffering, thrashing because it didn't understand why it hurt. Calder stepped forward like he wanted to help it right then and there. Lightning flashed, and for a second, everything froze in white light. The cliffs, the spray, the whale's eye glinting through pain. Then a massive wave smashed into the rock, sending water slamming over the walkway rail. Calder stumbled toward the lower ledge. "Calder," I yelled. He didn't hear me or didn't think. He ran toward the steps leading down, maybe thinking he could reach the rope, or calm the whale, or fix something with his bare hands. Varga lunged after him, grabbing his jacket right before he hit the slick metal. Her boot slipped. She nearly went over with him. One of her patrol guys grabbed her belt and hauled both of them back from the drop. "Stay with the group," she shouted, breath ragged. "You don't run off alone." Calder nodded, shaking, soaked to the bone. I thought maybe. You thought wrong," she snapped. Then softer, "Don't make me drag you inside." The storm hammered us again. The walkway rattled under our feet. Inside, the radios crackled with useless static, then cut out. The generator whined once, twice. Lights flickered like dying fireflies. That's when the guilt finally crushed me. I stood in the control room doorway, shaking, staring at the ruined sea. The whale fighting for its life. The station creaking under pressure. All of it tied back to one stupid moment of boredom. I felt my breath hitch, then forced it out. I triggered the flare. Everyone turned. Varga's expression didn't change, but her eyes hardened. Haynes looked at me like I'd spat in his drink. Calder looked confused, then horrified as the truth sank in. "You what?" he asked. "It wasn't a misfire," I said. I set the timer. I faked a contact on the sonar to spook Calder. It was supposed to be a joke. Silence hit the room heavier than the storm. Varga stepped forward. "You did what?" "It was a stupid prank," I said. "I didn't know the sea was going to shift like that. I didn't know," my voice cracked. "I didn't think." Haynes swore so hard it was almost a growl. "You pulled a stunt while we were watching unknown movement in the water." "I didn't know the timing would line up," I said. That doesn't matter, Varga snapped. You dragged my team out on the rocks at the worst damn moment. I didn't fight her, couldn't. She was right. Calder backed away from me. Why would you do that? I was bored, I said, hating the words even as I said them. It was supposed to be harmless. Nothing out here is harmless, Varga hissed. Another deep rumble rolled through the water. The whale surfaced again, body carving a path through the storm like a wounded tank. Water sprayed hard across the station windows. Everyone turned to look. Its breathing was rough. The rope dug into its back. Blood streaked across the swell. It wasn't attacking us. It wasn't a monster. It was trapped, fighting for air, fighting the cable by accident. And every second it fought, the station shook harder. The guilt in my gut twisted sharp. My prank hadn't caused the whale, but it had dragged us into the worst possible position at the worst possible time. And now we were stuck between saving ourselves and watching a living creature tear itself apart. Thunder cracked over us. Waves pounded the cliffs. The station groaned again, long and deep. A warning. Varga turned to the group. We don't have time to fight each other, or blame anyone. We need to figure out how to keep that thing from taking us down with it. Haynes wiped rain from his eyes. If we don't act soon, the cable's gonna snap wrong and rip out the lower systems. And if we do nothing, the whale dies, Calder said. Everyone stared at the water. The whale surged up again in the storm, massive head rising, gasping, the rope carving into flesh. It wasn't an enemy. It wasn't thinking about us at all. It was drowning, and dragging us with it. I felt the weight of all of it. Storm, guilt, fear pressed down hard. Varga looked at me last. Not forgiving, not even close. But she wasn't wasting time on anger now. Her voice cut through the storm. We need a plan. The storm didn't let up. The sky was a smear of dark gray, wind tearing across the cliffs hard enough to bend the antenna mast. The sea roared like it was swallowing the world. The whale thrashed again, a massive body fighting the rope that strangled it and the cable it dragged with every desperate roll. The station groaned, a long metallic warning none of us could ignore. Varga wiped rain off her face and pointed toward the supply shack by the west walkway. We need cutting tools, long ones, Haynes grunted. You're thinking of cutting the rope? We can't cut the cable from inside without killing power and flooding the lower levels, she said. We have to take the tension off first. And get close enough to cut the net, I added quietly. Calder stared at the boiling surf. We can't go into the water. No one's going in, Varga snapped. We worked from the rock edge, ropes, hooks, long reach only. She was right. Diving into that swell was suicide. Even a strong swimmer would get slammed into the rocks before they got 10 feet. Haynes limped toward the storage shack, motioning for 2 patrol soldiers to follow. We'll need the long pole hooks, bolt cutters, the serrated blades. The storm drowned out his last words. I followed Varga to the walkway railing. The whale surfaced again, huge, slick, panicked. Its breath blasted hot mist into the cold air. The rope trailing behind it stretched tight as it twisted. The cable under the water strained with it. I heard the anchors grinding beneath the rock like teeth. Varga yelled over the wind. That thing dives one more time and the cable's gone. Gone how? Calder asked. Gone as in ripping out the lower structure, Haynes said, dragging a crate of gear. Gone as in we lose the generator room. Gone as in the sea walks right into the station. He wasn't exaggerating. One more bad pull and we'd be standing in knee-deep water with no power and no radios. We set up fast, ropes tied around our waists, harness clipped to the anchor poles. The hooked pole, a long metal staff with a curved end, was heavy even without the storm throwing itself at us. Bolt cutters hung at my side, serrated blades strapped to Varga's wrist. Calder's hand shook, but he helped anyway. He held the flares. We'd need them to see the rope clearly when the whale surfaced. Don't use them to scare it, Varga warned him. Hold them high. Nothing else. He nodded. We moved to the rock edge above the lower shelf. Waves smashed below, exploding up the cliff wall. Spray hit hard enough to sting. The wind howled like it wanted to tear the tools out of our hands. The whale rolled close, a giant shadow heaving through the surf. Its back breached, showing raw marks where the rope dug deep. Varga lifted her voice. When it surfaces again, we hook the trailing rope and pull it in as far as we can. Don't touch the cable. If we free the rope enough to slacken the tension, Haynes can cut the cable safely from inside. And then? Calder asked. And then we cut the net, she said. As much of it as we can. And if it moves, he whispered. Then we don't die trying to be heroes, she said. We pull back fast. She meant it. The whale surfaced again, a violent rush upward. Water sprayed everywhere. Calder lit the first flare. The red glow cut through the rain, shining off the rope dragging behind the whale. There, he shouted. Varga grabbed the hooked pole. Brace the line. 3 of us held the anchor rope at her waist as she leaned out over the ledge, reaching with the hook. Lightning flashed. Thunder cracked so loud I felt it in my ribs. Her hook caught. Got it, she yelled. Pull, I shouted. We hauled the line back inch by inch, muscles burning, boots slipping on the soaked walkway. The rope strained like a living thing. The whale thrashed again, and the force nearly ripped the pole out of Varga's hands. She grunted and dug her feet into the rail. Hold, she yelled. We pulled again hard enough my shoulders screamed. The rope moved, just a little, but enough to slacken the drag on the cable beneath the water. The station shuddered once, but less violently. Haynes sprinted inside. That's it, hold it steady. I'll cut the cable. Lightning flashed again. Everything shook. The whale tried to dive. The rope nearly jerked us all forward. My boots skidded. Calder slipped and I grabbed him by the collar, hauling him upright. Don't let go, Varga shouted. The rope yanked so hard my arms lit up with pain. But we held it long enough for the whale to stop twisting. Then something deep inside the station boomed. The cable was tearing loose. Through the rain we heard Haynes shout, "Cutting now." A heavy snap echoed up through the rock. The walkway shook like an earthquake. A deep metallic whine screeched through the floor under us. Then another snap, louder. The cable had torn free. But it didn't let go clean. It tore in stages, each one slamming tension back through the station. The second snap ripped through the lower level like a shotgun blast. Structure breach, someone yelled inside. A surge of icy wind and water blasted through the open doorway. I heard metal collapse. A door slamming shut. Someone shouting for help. Someone's trapped, Calder yelled. Varga dropped the pole and sprinted inside. Doyle, with me, I ran after her. The corridor was dark, lit only by flickering emergency lights. Water poured from the stairwell, ankle-high and rising. One of the patrol soldiers, Anders, was stuck behind a jammed door, pounding on it with both fists. Help! Water's filling in here. Varga rammed her shoulder against the door. It didn't budge. She backed up, kicked hard. The metal groaned but stayed jammed. Move, I said. Together we hit the door with everything we had. Shoulders slamming metal, boots sliding on wet floor. The storm outside roared through the failing structure. Again, she shouted. We hit it once more. The hinge snapped. The door swung open, smashing hard into the wall. Anders stumbled out, soaked, coughing. Varga grabbed him by the scruff, pulled him up the stairs. Go. Move. Water surged behind us, pouring from the broken seal in a rush. Back outside, the wind slapped us hard. The whale surfaced again, this time gasping, struggling, the slackened rope trailing loose now that the cable wasn't pulling it down. The station creaked like something dying. Haynes staggered out of the doorway, holding his side. Cables cut. Powers holding for now. But the lower room is gone. He wasn't lying. The whole west corner of the station sagged toward the sea. The whale rolled again, surfacing so close I could feel the warm spray of its breath. The rope cut deep into its back, but now without the cable. At least it wasn't being dragged under with every movement. We go again, Varga said, panting. We cut the net. I nodded and grabbed the hooked pole. This time, when the whale surfaced, it wasn't thrashing as violently. It was exhausted, hurting, barely lifting its head for air. We hooked the rope again, closer this time. Varga leaned out, blade in hand. Rain slammed into her side. Waves crashed beneath her boots. She slashed once, twice. The serrated edge cut through wet rope with brutal effort. A final slice, and the rope snapped free, the cut end whipping into the air before falling into the surf. The whale lurched as the tension vanished. For a heartbeat, everything went quiet except the storm. Then it rolled one last time, slow, steady, dragging the freed net behind it as it turned away from the rocks. I took a long breath. A low, deep call rumbled through the water. Not panicked, not pained, just tired. Then it slipped into deeper water, vanishing into the storm-torn sea. We stood there, panting, soaked, shaking, watching the ocean swallow the last of its shadow. The cable was gone. The lower level was wrecked. The station was barely standing. But the whale was free. And for the first time since the flare went off, the sea started to calm. The storm eased slow, like it wasn't sure whether to quit or swing back and finish the job. The wind dropped first. Then the rain thinned to a wet mist. The waves settled from angry walls to rough rolls. By the time the sky lightened past dawn, we were standing on a broken station. The lower west section was gone, collapsed into the sea. A jagged edge of metal and pipe hung over the cliff where the floor used to be. Water sloshed below, dragging debris into the deep. The cable was gone, snapped, and dead. We gathered in the main hallway, the one part of the station still solid. The air smelled like rust and seawater and engine oil. Haynes sat on a crate, one hand pressed to his ribs. He looked old for the first time since I'd known him. "Power's running off the backup loop," he said. "Barely. Enough for heat and maybe one radio channel." "Which one?" Varga asked. "The main outbound," he muttered. "Everything else is fried." She nodded. "Good enough." The patrol team huddled near the wall, wrapped in blankets. Calder sat with them, staring at the floor. Still shaking a little, but he was alive. All of us were. That counted. I crouched beside him. "You okay?" He nodded. "Didn't meet my eyes." "The whale, it got out?" "Yeah," I said. "It's gone." He breathed out slow. "Good, no thanks. No anger either. Just tired acceptance." Varga moved through the room, checking everyone with that cold, steady focus she had. When she stopped in front of me, she paused. "You stepped up," she said. Not friendly, not soft, just true. I didn't answer. "We'll talk about the flare later," she added. I nodded. "Fair." For now, we had bigger things to deal with than chewing me out. Once the station was stable enough, Haynes powered the outbound radio. The speaker crackled like it was full of sand, but he coaxed it into a single steady channel. Varga leaned in. North Atlantic Station reporting structural damage. Partial collapse. Multiple systems down. Request immediate evac. Silence for a long moment. Then a faint voice answered through static. "Copy, North Atlantic. Signal weak, but readable. Storm breaking. Aircraft will check your grid when weather clears." We all let out a breath we didn't realize we'd been holding. The next few hours were slow, heavy. We cleaned what we could. Secured anything loose. Moved everyone into the safest room with heat. No arguments, no shouting. Just work. The storm broke fully by midday. When the first distant aircraft hum reached us, it felt unreal, like hearing something from another world. A helicopter finally appeared through the thinning clouds. Small at first, then louder, sharper, banking over the cliffs before settling on the flattest patch of rock. Rescue crew hopped out fast, eyes wide at the sight of our mangled station. They loaded the injured first. Haynes went, cursing and insisting he could walk just fine. Varga waited until the last group. Calder went pale as they helped him aboard, but he kept his head up. I was near the end. When I stepped toward the helicopter, I glanced back at the station, half drowned, half broken. The place that had bored me into doing something stupid enough to almost kill us. I didn't feel pride or relief, just a cold understanding of how thin the line was between harmless boredom and real damage. Hours later, after they flew us to the mainland, debrief officers shuffled us into small rooms and asked their questions. Most of it was technical weather, structural failure, timeline. One officer asked if we had seen anything unusual. Varga answered first. "Just a whale caught in old fishing gear." He nodded like that was enough. A day later, during another round of questions, someone mentioned a sighting far out to sea, big whale, moving slow, trailing a faint scar line across its back. Someone on a fishing boat had seen it pushing toward deeper water. I sat still when I heard that. Didn't say anything. Didn't need to. But that low sound, the whale's call, stayed in my head. Not as a monster, not as some legend, just a reminder. The sea doesn't care about pranks, doesn't care about rank, doesn't care why you did something stupid. It just reacts. And sometimes you're lucky enough to walk away,